Hello there, World of Tankers. Welcome to the channel. I'm, of course, your host, deadliest Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about this, the Tier 10 Russian tank destroyer. One of two Russian tank destroyers, the Object 263. The other one, of course, is the well-rounded Object 268, a vehicle that's got great mobility, great penetration, it's got high alpha at 640 per shot, and very, very troll armor. This tank is not well-rounded. If anything, this thing's like a frickin' cube. It's got great aspects in certain areas, like super high DPM, but in other aspects, it's terrible, like its side armor and as well gun depression. In today's video, we're going to be breaking into everything you need to know, not only about the 263, but the Tier 9, the SU-122-54, and the Tier 8, the SU-101. These are all very, very cool tanks. I actually love all of them, but they do have some big downsides if you don't know how to play them correctly, and we'll be breaking into all these things in today's video. So if you were ever interested in grinding this line, but you needed that little bit of a boost or dissuasion to not go for it, today's video will be the day that I guess you get that dissuasion or persuasion, should I say. So let's get straight into the SU-101. Now this is the weirdest of the line because you start off technically at the SU-100M1. That is the first vehicle that is very similar to the rest. The SU-100M1 actually has very, very good DPM. It's 2,680 or something. It's very good DPM, and it has the best penetration for a Tier 7 in the game. It's 230 on the standard and 364 on the premium. You heard that right. A Tier 7 with 364 pen. It's ridiculous. It literally cuts through all armor in the game. It's super mobile, so with that, the Tier 7 is actually a pretty fun tank. The Tier 8 is also very fun, but the thing that's weird I find about the Tier 8, and I don't know why this is, but it loses a huge chunk of DPM. In fact, it loses 300 damage per minute from the Tier 7. It goes from 2,600 to 23. But it does gain a big slap of alpha, goes from 320 to 420, so that's good. Not only does it get more alpha, but it also gets penetration. This thing, as you just saw there, did get a bounce from the T49. Now, of course, the 49 was running the 90mm, but technically the 90mm has more pen, so I guess that's better for talking about the armor. But the vehicle does have good armor in certain aspects, but as well, it's got very poor armor on the lower plate. This thing's kind of like a T44 hull, where it's about, I'd say, 160, 170 on the upper plate, and then the superstructure is actually about 200mm, which is good. So it has good spots somewhere, but yeah, that gun depression, that's it. I think it's 2 degrees if I'm not mistaken. It's quite appalling. In fact, it's going to make you hate the vehicle when you're using it. That gun depression, it's terrible. Thankfully, this is a very low down tank. So because of that, you are able to get a couple snapshots off because you're so low down, where normally a vehicle like, let's say, the Vindicator being super tall would struggle with the gun depression. Now this vehicle, as I said, has about 200mm of upper parts armor. So because of that, even the premium rounds from that Annihilator bounced our superstructure. We got some pretty good bounces all around. The armor on this tank is actually surprisingly strong. So I guess that the reason the DPM is not super high is because the counter the armor, but it's not like it's Foch armor. It's not like it's an AMX AC armor. It's not amazing. It's just good. But here we go. We're at 2,900 damage and about to roll out one more shell. Bippity boppity. Thank you for the hit points. And now we're sitting at 3,300 damage, so not too bad. And of course, me being the damage whore that I am and going to ignore that Panther and shoot the ISU. But as well, I have a reason behind that. It is an ISU, and we all know and hate what happens when ISUs shoot you. So yeah, this game, you can see that, sure, the DPM isn't amazing, but it was still able to work a pretty solid job. The penetration literally turned all armor in the butter. If I had the load, the heat shells, it has the most heat pen for a Tier 8 in the game. It's 374mm, which is, of course, the IS-4 gun. In fact, that's what this is. This is an IS-4 gun with basically the same damage per minute, just on a Tier 8 tank destroyer, which is pretty strong, actually, when you think about it in certain aspects, like that penetration. But for the DPM, yeah, I do wish it was just a little bit more, maybe like 2,600 or so. I think that would make it a lot more good. But hey, we still did 4,004 damage, and it shows that you can get a pretty solid game out as long as you play the tank correctly. But in a normal scenario, if that Annihilator had pendant shells on me, I would have been dead, and that would have been the end of the replay. So yeah, I got lucky. I'm going to put it like that. We'll just say that for that game, I did get very, very lucky. Now, breaking on to the SU-122-54, this vehicle has the single highest DPM in the entire game. I call vehicles the deadliest all the time. I call the AT-15 the deadliest, which is correct. It is pretty much the deadliest in the tier that it's at. But this vehicle is technically the deadliest in the game. It's got 4,200 and I think 75 damage per minute, which is insane. That means that you are literally able to rip into frontal armor. Of course, it carries the exact same gun again as the SU-101, so it has the IS-4 penetration, but I'm not running calibrated on this vehicle. I am running Cali on the SU-101, but I'm not on this because this tank actually wants to run on DPM. That's the main aspect of this tank. So I'm like, well, I might as well boost it. This is one of the few vehicles that I actually run gun rammer on. But oh boy, 4,300 DPM makes it pretty dang swell. And you're going to see just how swell that is when we're using it in this replay here. I played this tank a couple times last night, and I was really thinking about the line. I was like, man, this is such a fun tank to play, such a deadly vehicle. And you're going to see that here. We've got a full health Tortoise and as well a full health of Mill too. And well, say goodbye to hit points. That's all I'm going to say. So here's the Tortoise, and we're going to snap a shell and not pen it, sadly. But I don't think I actually got detected from that. No, I was kind of weirded out why I didn't get detected, but oh baby, here we go. So that's one shell, and yeah, I put on my adrenaline. So now in another, 5 seconds, we've now tapped out 800 damage. In 5 seconds, we've done 800 damage. There we go. That's 15 seconds, we've done 1,200 damage. Now we've got the Tortoise over here. So now it's 20 seconds, we're at 1,800 damage. Like, you can see how ridiculous the DPM is. There you go, another shot, 2,200 damage in 25 seconds. And dead. There you go. So in about 30 seconds, we killed a Tortoise, and we are still not stopping. There you go. There's another nice tap into the mill. 2,600 damage in about 40 seconds. And boom. There you go. 2,800 damage in about 45 seconds. There you have it, folks. That is the potential of the SU. If you are able to use this thing and get its DPM out, you are literally able to just completely destroy full health opponents. It's insane, but it does have issues. First of all, again, gun depression is not amazing. The armor is practically none. You saw there that I didn't really bounce any shells that hit me. So because of that, you have to be very careful when you run this tank. It has no armor, which is not good, because, yeah, with only 1,700 hit points, that means 4 shells from any 120 millimeter, you're out of the game. If you get hit by a 600 alpha gun, you're not feeling too well. So yeah, it does have big weaknesses, and a good example of how quick your hit points can drain is that Yo on the enemy team will literally just demolish me. So yeah, it does have issues. The hit points is one of them, the armor is one of them, but to make up for the terrible armor and very iffy hit points, it does have fantastic mobility. In fact, this tank is basically based on a T-54, so because of that, it's very quick. It's able to go upwards of 56 kilometers per hour, and you can see I'm driving easily here at 43 kilometers per hour. So the mobility is great. You don't ever have to worry about slowing down. Repositioning is fantastic, and that's good because the only thing this vehicle needs is that mobility so that you can use the high DPM. The other big disadvantage on this vehicle, I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a hiccup there. The only other big disadvantage of this tank is the fact that it doesn't have a turret. I know that's like, well, duh, it's a turretless tank destroyer, Rudolph. But it doesn't have a turret, which is a big downside, because a vehicle like the Waffle, well, that tank can just kind of snap a shot and then back up. This vehicle, because you can't do that, does have big weaknesses, but that Scorpion obviously underestimated my reload, so because of that, I was able to do pretty dang good. Now, I did not shoot that Chimera because Batchat was trying to do the Kunze-Panzer grind, so I let him get the final damage there, but with that, we did pretty dang solid. I did 4,000 damage this game, and 13 shots fired, 13 shots penned. Now, the gun is not that accurate. In fact, if we take a look at the accuracy, you'll see that it's definitely quite lackluster on the accuracy. It's .326, so it's not amazing, but it's decent. It's kind of like the E25 of Tier 9. That's what I like to think of it, but oh my god, 4,275 DPM. That is insane. Moving on to the final tank, the Object 263. This is where it gets really, really weird, because it has less DPM than the Tier 10. I wish that it had 4,000, just 4,000 on the dot, but even then, it still has very, very high DPM, sitting at 3,856, the most in Tier 10. Not only does it have very good DPM, but it's got very good penetration. It's got 290 on the standard, and its dispersion at .290 is pretty solid, judging that, as you can see here, I'm running just vertical stabilizers and enhanced gun length drive. So it's an accurate gun. It's got good penetration. Its aiming time is pretty solid. So all those things are great. Doesn't miss that many shells. It's got high alpha at 460, so it's only got a 7-second reload for 460. So what's the bad parts about this tank? Well, its gun depression is 4 degrees, which is terrible. It's actually just terrible. Its mobility is good, though. It goes 55 kilometers per hour, 20 in reverse, with a great power-to-weight ratio of 20. So, what's bad? Well, it's the armor. That's the killer. The side has none. It has no armor whatsoever. The front, you bend right through the lower plate. You can pen through the superstructure, which would be the mantlet, because you can see it does have a mantlet, but there's nothing behind it. So as long as you can pen through that mantlet, you just damage the tank. Normally, there's a piece of armor behind the mantlet. A good example would be like this, or like this. You can see that you pen through the mantlet, but then there's armor it has to pen behind it, so you never just pen it. This tank has no armor, so you just pen straight through it with premium, and then, yeah, there goes the tank's hit points. So it's good. But you will see, especially in this replay, that even though it does very, very well, it has big issues. But, oh mama, if you get this gun to work, enemy team go bye-bye very, very quickly. But that biggest killer is really gun depression. Because the tank's quick, it has very strong frontal armor. It's great for pushing super aggressive on mediums. But when you have very poor gun depression at 4 degrees, the gun arc isn't fantastic. And yeah, it does fall apart quickly, especially with that super weak track wheel. This thing's got some big track wheels, and you can easily shoot them when they are exposed. So, overall, I do like this tank. Especially, this is one of my favorite tier 10s, because it's such a dynamic playstyle. It's not like your average tier 10 heavy, where you just take shot, deal damage, you know? This tank, you are in the battle. You are trying to put that huge DPM into emphasis on the enemy team. But if you can't, then you still can run it like the tank destroyer. Like that 460 alpha is still pretty dang impressive when you think about it. But yeah, it definitely has issues. The biggest issue I find with this tank is that literally the Ag Tiger has more armor than it. It doesn't go as fast, but it's got more DPM for the same alpha and basically better penetration. So yeah, that aspect I don't like about this tank. But I do still like the mobility. And by the way, the Ag Tiger has way, way more gun depression. I think it's like 8 degrees or something. So that's the only thing I really dislike about this tank, is that the Ag Tiger is a tier 9 TD, and it's basically better than the tier 10 263. But you're still going to see here that I'm going to do pretty dang solid. Here we go. That's 3 shots into the E100, and we've already taken 1,247 hit points off of him in about, what, 12, 18 seconds here. There's another tap. He dead. That's it. E100 dead. Then we've got the full health super contact. Yes, English is great for me, but yeah, 493 from one tap there. We're sitting at 2,000 hit points already, and we're just going to keep on tapping this guy. There's another tap, another 490 roll. Thank you, Wargaming, for that. And sadly, the Super Conqueror is going to finish off my teammate, but we're not going to sit quite lightly here. We're already at 2,900 hit points, and I'm going to load a premium round and shoot this guy right in the upper plate. Boom. Thank you very much. 3,142 hit points, and because this guy's AFK over here, we get to use that high DPM and just take this poor guy's hit points straight back to the garage. Here we go. There's one shot we've already penned on him. Here's the second. Boom. We're now at 4,122 damage. And are we going to be able to get that final shell out? Well, because that E5 missed, boop. There you go. 4,463 damage. The only game I've played in this tank today, but I thought it was a perfect game to show what happens if it's played correctly. Now, there are many games I've played in this vehicle where I drive out in the open and then just, boom, I die. That's me. I'm dead. So, does have big scenarios where it's poor. But, for the most part, the 263 is a great tank. And if you know how to play it correctly, it will be one of the deadliest tanks at tier 10. So, it's fun, it's very mobile, but would I suggest to grind it? That's the final verdict here. Yes and no. The thing is if you're not a super experienced player, and that's for you to decide. If you think you're great at the game, or if you think you're good enough to know how to play this type of tank, then you can grind it. But if you don't enjoy it, then that's on you, because I'm not pinning it on me. Because I do think that you need to be a very decent player to know how to run this vehicle well. Even people, like I remember when Batchat Begins started playing this tank, and he hated it. And I think he still really strongly dislikes it. But I had to show him how I played it before he actually started to understand the playstyle, because it really is a super tricky tank. If you run it aggressive against tank destroyers, you get demolished because they outtrade you. If you run it against mediums, they shoot you in the track wheel, and they use their mobility and they get to the side of you. So it's a pseudo-aggressive playstyle where you can fight mediums, but you have to read the lineup. It's so weird on the playstyle. And it would take me literally a 50-minute video to talk about all the scenarios with this tank. So yeah, it's weird, it's fun, it's strong. I really don't know how to put it. I'd also suggest to watch Fatness's video on this tank if you want to get a more in-depth playstyle on the tank itself. But for the most part, it is a very, very fun tank, and I love playing it. So, yeah, I would suggest to grind it if you want a tank with super high DPM, because especially the SG-122 is just such a fun vehicle. But hopefully, all of you enjoyed today's video. If you want to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. Other than that, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.